Hi, Kat.
Hello.
How are you?
I am okay.
That's awesome. I'm okay too.
You know, we have to get out of bed every morning and we have to say to ourselves, I am here. My legs work. When
The
they do,
sun came up.
the sun came up.
Yeah,
You know,
when I went to get coffee this morning in my kitchen, um, I looked out the window. Our bedroom is up on an upper floor, and I looked outside and it was kind of cloudy, but then there was this just bright orange streak of the sun breaking between the clouds. So it was like this really beautiful line of really dark orange sunshine. And I was like, wow, if I would have like taken one more minute either direction, I wouldn't have seen it. And I keep thinking how remarkable it is that I get to see the sun every day, even if it's cloudy and rainy and all those things, like the sun still rises.
I agree. We are in February, and I think it is a joy to behold the days lengthening.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, it's really
And
nice.
I appreciate I'm not in your country at the moment, but I feel that nobody right now feels particularly tethered and safe.
Mhm.
And I think that a good practice is definitely to spend a couple of moments every day. And by the way, I'm just saying all of this. This is what I'm finding. I am not good at practicing it. So anyone who's listening that thinks that I'm being sanctimonious, please don't, because I am the worst student. But finding those small things to be grateful for
Mhm.
is a really good exercise. And
Mhm.
that's why I say, I know there may be some people listening who aren't in the best of physical health. And I'm sorry for that and for you. When I get out of bed in the morning and I walk to the bathroom, I give thanks that my legs work well enough to get me to the bathroom.
Listen, having had legs that didn't work well enough to get me to the bathroom, I totally understand that. I um I was outside last night too and it was cloudy, but I looked up and the moon was just creeping through the clouds like in this really beautiful hazy like it wasn't giving off much light, but it was just so beautiful and I keep thinking as I am in this country and thinking about all of the things I can do to, you know, help others and be connected and not become I was telling you a little bit earlier, like not becoming too constricted, you know? The glare on my glasses is bugging me this morning. That I'm not it's a I have to constantly check in with myself to make sure that I'm not letting my grief and overwhelm put me into a space where I'm becoming tighter, um, or where I'm not breathing deeply. And I think it is these little moments that where I'm just like, oh, the sun keeps coming up, the moon keeps coming up. There's that regular cycle of a day that just allows me to stay anchored in just one day at a time.
Hmm.
And as some I really appreciate the idea that I've been talking to people a lot about this because I think a lot of people are freaking out about what the future could mean or could be,
Hmm.
especially here in the United States in February of 2025. Like
Hmm.
people are freaking out. I'm freaking out. Everybody's freaking out.
Hmm.
No matter where you are on the political spectrum, people are still like freaking out. And
Hmm.
Um, I really have been thinking so much each day about how to be just a tiny bit more tender with
Hmm.
myself and other people, and also how to remain open
Hmm.
in a time where a lot of people want to shut down.
Hmm.
And I think that it is such a, I don't know, I just think that the magic and the wisdom of each day taking place, even though we don't know what's going to happen in a day, is so important right now,
Hmm.
especially as we're drinking from a fire hose.
Hmm. There's
And
a lot there that you're talking about.
what's
Um,
that?
there's a lot there that you are talking about. There's a lot to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
First thing that I'm going to say is that the drinking from a fire hose is a very deliberate
Mm-hmm.
strategy of your government to try and confuse and bewilder and frighten people
Mm-hmm.
into their fear.
Yeah,
It's it is an absolute classic strategy of you create all the small fires so that you can't see the big one burning. And
right.
so, if you just bamboozle people with this and that and this and that and this and that, it's hard to see
Yeah.
where the actual issues are that need focusing on. So that's one thing. That is a well-worn strategy. And, it's almost a lack of smarts because it's a really obvious strategy.
Yeah.
And we all need to be really aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you can see it, when you can label it, it loses its power. Not all of its power. It's never going to lose all of its power, but it's going to lose power when you realize it's a game that is being played and it's an old game.
Yeah.
On the topic of constriction and feeling like we're holding our breath, I think it's really key for us to talk about how fear takes hold of us.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are frightened, some people will naturally know they're frightened. Some people won't. It's actually really hard, isn't it, for us to label our emotions. But when we're in fear, the first thing that we try and do in this very action-oriented culture that we exist within is we go into fixer mode, we go into control mode, we try and control things. And that creates a rigidity and a brittleness and a fragility that will wound you.
Mm-hmm.
And, the act of holding your breath or suddenly realizing that you haven't been breathing deeply, shallow breathing is not optimal for our health, right? Deep breathing, if you go into, and again, I'm saying this, I am not the best student here, so full disclosure, but if you practice some deep breathing, it soothes your parasympathetic nervous system. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And with the things that present themselves in life as most terrifying, whatever that is, whether that is a job loss, the end of a relationship, a bereavement, the end of a way of being, the end of democracy, whatever that stuff is,
Mm-hmm.
there comes a point where you are stripped so bare that there's nothing to hold on to, and you just have to release yourself to the unknown.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that so much because I think I I I talk a lot about the graceful revolution, right? And when I very first started talking about it, I actually got a lot of resistance from activists. They were like, you can't put grace and revolution in the same sentence. Like people literally told me that. And I was like, why not? Like we need to have more grace for ourselves. We need to have more compassion for ourselves. And I've been thinking so much about the antidote to hate is love, right? Like the antidote to fear is compassion. And I really, and it's not perfection. Like it's not engaging in activism in a perfectionist kind of a way, right? It's about really discerning what are the things that I can do that are the most important to me to impact the world around me, to impact what's happening, to give more love and grace to myself and to my family or my friends or whatever that is. And there is such an expansiveness in that. Like there's such a a big deep breath in that. And we're going to need protests, we're going to need anger, we're going to need the fight. And also we're also going to need the so many people are talking about the resistance right now, and like they're using that word resistance, and I think it was Wayne Dyer who said what we resist persists. And so the more we resist the change that's happening, particularly in our democracy in the United States, but I think all over the world, the more it persists. So what do we do differently in how do we engage differently? And the way we engage differently is to allow ourselves not to resist what's happening, but to really clearly, with clear heart, clear soul, clear eyes, look at what's happening and what we can do. What are the little things that we can do that will add up to the big things that will shift everything that's happening?
You've reminded me of a quote by Buckminster Fuller.
Mm,
And the quote
great
is
name.
Adam
That's a great name, Buckminster.
Buckminster Fuller, Bucky, as I believe he was known. The quote is, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete."
Mm, yeah.
And this is the thing, right? Here we are, and ultimately what is going on right now is that you've got some very strange men in charge trying to sustain an economic model that has started its demise. Capitalism cannot continue because we have breached almost all of the environmental boundaries. There is only so much resource that can be put into the sustenance of capitalism. And the model, the construct of capitalism is working for fewer and fewer and fewer people. So the people that we see visibly trying to dismantle the systems that provide aid, support, employment to people in your country, those people are the ones who've got most to lose.
Mm. And they are trying to sustain a model that was built on owning people
Mhm.
and committing acts of genocide. Like
Mhm.
I think that, when I look at this from my ancestral native perspective, I think about, you know, I keep thinking about this model of capitalism is built on owning other human beings and killing other people.
Hmm.
And and they're using so much coded language, like the manifest destiny of colonizing Mars. Like it's like when they use the words manifest destiny, what they're talking about is the westward expansion that killed so many indigenous people in this country, right? And so this model is not just built on this on this capitalistic structure of take and extract, extract, extract. It's also built on we have to we have to talk about the fact that it's built on owning and killing people because that's what it's still doing. Us losing our livelihoods, us losing our health care. Not to mention the fact that we are losing people in the FBI and the CIA who are meant to protect us, right?
Hmm.
Like there is, I keep, okay, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, Kat. I know you're surprised. I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts. I don't know why this is making me feel better, but here we are. And when these women talk about stalking, and they're all podcasts that are done by women, they always talk about going to the FBI. And I'm sitting here going, there's not going to be an FBI to go to. And that is a way of continuing to cause women and people of color harm because we won't be protected, right?
Hmm.
And there won't be anywhere for us to go as as these structures become more and more and more constricted and oppressive. And I just, as we're going through this experience and we're watching what's happening, I feel like the answer is not to constrict. The answer is to open up. I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, "You don't want to go through," it was a client, and I said, "Do you want to spend the next 20 or 30 years of your life with your hands closed fisted like this? Or do you
Mm.
want to have to enter the world with your hands open and ready to receive whatever it is that is
Hmm.
coming for you?" And there's such a difference between that constricted, holding on for dear life, really primal response, and opening up to
Hmm.
receiving the support and the love and the connection that that's going to sustain us long term. Because you're
Hmm.
right, this capitalistic model of crap is not going to sustain us long term. That's obvious.
And it is collapsing. The collapse has begun. So I have two questions, just born of a couple of things you said there. Um, if the system, if capitalism was sustainable, why would we be seeking to colonize Mars? That's question one.
Yep.
Question two, do we think that Elon is going to be the first dude on Mars testing it out for us all? Or do you think he's going to send hundreds of gullible fools to Mars to poison
Exactly.
themselves?
That's
At least
exactly
that's
right.
on it.
And they're never going to get there. Like, let's just be really honest.
I know. I
And
was humoring him for a little moment there.
and
The child who watched a little bit too much Star Trek.
a little too much. And and we can't let them distract us with those things, right? Like we have to focus on and I hope anyone who's listening to this like can hear that we have to focus on leading from a space of compassion and love for ourselves and other people.
We have to start with ourselves,
Yes,
actually.
it all
When
starts with
you
us.
when you talk about, the example that you gave of somebody who's holding their fists really clenched and tight, I think we can probably all relate to the moment when we realize that we've been holding our breath and we've been breathing really shallowly, and the immediate response to that raised awareness is to take a deep breath and to breathe out and fully exhale. And I think we can all recall how that feels when you take that deep breath in and you take that deep exhale out, and how calming that moment is and how restorative that moment is. Or the moment where we realize that our shoulders have been really tightly clenched and we start to unlock them by rolling our shoulders back. But one of the things that I'm thinking about a lot at the moment is how limited and constricted we all are until the point where we come to terms with ourselves and become at peace with ourselves and even start loving ourselves. And I do not mean that in a narcissistic sense. I don't believe that narcissists love themselves. Narcissists put themselves first, first and foremost, because they weren't loved enough in childhood and they crave what they can never have. But what I'm talking about is a peaceful self-acceptance. And if we can be okay with ourselves, and we talked about this on a previous episode, the fallacy of perfectionism doesn't exist. Forget about it. It's a zero-sum game. You will never, ever, ever win that. But if you can just be at peace with who you are, and I talk about this because I'm living this experience at the moment. The moment that you reconcile yourself with who you are and become comfortable with being exactly who you're supposed to be in that moment, I believe you radiate an energy that renders you infinitely more attractive and lovable to your fellow humans, which is ironic, I think, and wonderful in parallel. And once you jump off and you fall into that place of self-acceptance, your ability to show compassion and empathy and love for your chosen family
Mhm.
magnifies, it just amplifies, it just becomes so much greater. And when they stand at the front of the aeroplane and they say, you need to put your oxygen mask on first before you go about helping other people. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We have to do our work. And for me, it boils down a little bit back to what are the things, what are the things that each and every day we can say, I'm glad for that one thing today. And it does not have to be big. It can be as little as my legs worked today. Or for me, I love reading. My eyes worked today. My
I
brain worked today. I was able to think my own thoughts today. There's that lovely, well, it's lovely slash horrible account that Viktor Frankl gave of living in Auschwitz
Mhm.
during the Second World War. And he, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he made the point, they can take away all my dignities, but they cannot take away my freedom to think my own thoughts.
Yep. Well, and I think what you're talking about is so important because it's so simple, right? I think, especially in this capitalistic society like that we live in, like people think it's complicated to make a change or make a difference, and it is as simple as breathing. Um, One of the things that came to mind while I was listening to you talk was breathe in the good shit, breathe out the bad shit. I used to say that all the time. And It is as simple as breathing, right? And it is as simple as just taking that one big deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And if you have to do that 37 million times a day, that's what you're doing. But I find the body to be such a fascinating thing because when we're sleeping, it doesn't think about what it has to do. It just does its thing. Like the blood still flows. The blood still flows, and we don't have to do anything about it. We don't have to do anything to make our blood flow while we're sleeping. And so if we connect back to our bodies and we connect back to that, to the what I was talking about earlier with the sun and the moon consistently and constantly doing what they do, we realize that when we tether ourselves to nature as naturally occurring beings on this planet, it really is simple. The way we change, the way we change the structure of tyranny is to breathe.
Yeah.
And in any book you read of anybody who has suffered, it all goes back to the breath. It goes back to simply noticing that there is still life within you until there isn't anymore.
The universal life force wants us to be here.
Yeah. And that is love.
Hmm.
That's love.
Hmm.
Oh, that's good conversation. Thanks.
You're welcome. These are great
Yeah,
conversations.
they really are. Thank you so much for being with me today.
You're welcome. I look forward to the next conversation.
Me too. Okay, bye.
Bye bye.